All right, here we are. All of a sudden, it's week number 2 of the National Football League season. Welcome to Jonesing for Football. Bill Jones with young Cody Winstead, who is celebrating an NFC East Division championship in Philadelphia after what transpired in week number 1. A totally dominant performance by the Philadelphia Eagles over Cody's playoff bound Detroit Lions. And let's see, the Giants beat the Titans, the Commanders beat the Jags, and the Cowboys beat the Cowboys are in the cellar in the National Football Conference Eastern Division. So that means the Eagles win the East, right, Cody?
Not quite, Bill Jones, but I tried to warn you. By the way, everyone is kind of like trying to downplay the Eagles win over the Lions. That's 2 good playoff teams going toe-to-toe there in Detroit. And honestly, it went down to the wire 38-35. I thought Philly looked good, jumping out to a big lead. The Lions kind of played well, jumping back into trying to get into it. But we're going to see those 2 teams maybe play again in January.
Oh, yeah, I like that. And we saw the return of Monday Night Football for the first time in decades. We had a Monday Night Football team broadcasting the game with the biggest free agent acquisitions of the offseason, Troy Aikman and Joe Buck in the broadcast booth. They should have worn the old yellow blazers like the Monday Night Football team used to wear back in the day when it was Dandy Dunn and Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford. Of course, one of those guys has one of those yellow jackets. That would be Troy Aikman, a Hall of Fame jacket. But it felt like a big game on Monday night.
Yep, definitely was. Good get for ESPN, Troy and Joe. I would tend to lean towards Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, Kaylee Hartung as being a bigger free agent acquisition, but that's just me and my Amazon TNF bias. But
that's right, you're involved in that. In fact, maybe that's where we should start this edition of Jonesing for Football. Thursday night.
Yeah, how about it, Bill Jones? Thursday night. It's the game of the week here in week 2. It's Chargers at Chiefs. It's my Super Bowl champion, the Chargers, versus your Super Bowl champion, the Kansas City Chiefs. What are you most looking forward to in this game?
I'm looking forward to 5 more touchdown passes from Patrick Mahomes as the Chiefs. In fact, that I think I haven't checked, and I don't remember what my pick was in my knockout pool from the first week. I think I did not survive the first week. And now that I think, yeah, that's right. And now that I think about it, the game that I should have picked was Kansas City over Arizona. That was the no-brainer pick of the week, even though it was at Arizona, because it was my Super Bowl team, Kansas City, against my team that is going to fall flat on its face this year, and that was Arizona. And in true to form, that's exactly what happened on Sunday afternoon. And so I think that Kansas City will just carry on. And here 4 days later, Thursday night game, I'm taking the Chiefs over the Chargers.
Well, I'm just letting you know right now, the Chargers are a little bit better than the Cardinals, but I'm pumped to see the quarterback play, Bill Jones, because Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes were awesome in week 1. Listen to these stats against playoff teams from a year ago. Herbert went 279, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and a 129 rating. Pretty good, but not as good as Mahomes, who went 360, 5 scores, like you mentioned, 0 picks, and a 144 rating. Both guys made some unreal throws, and that got me even more hyped about the game. And I want to talk about the defenses, if you'll let me just quickly, Bill Jones, because the quarterbacks got all the headlines, but both defenses were really impressive in week 1. LA forced 3 turnovers against Vegas, while that Kansas City defense held Kyler and the Cardinals to just 282 yards. And Khalil Mack, Dr. Jones, for the Chargers, their prize offseason acquisition, who might be a little bit bigger than Troy and Joe. Who knows? We'll see. 3 sacks for Khalil Mack, 3 tackles for loss, 6 tackles, a forced fumble, and it was the second most sacks he's had in a game in his entire career. He actually had 5 in a game back in 2015, but I can't wait to see him and Joey Bosa coming off the edge and forcing Mahomes to make some crazy throws on Sunday Night Football. There are going to be fireworks, and I am fired up for that.
All right, and again, I don't want to bury the lead here, but you have a role on these Thursday night games now. Am I hearing that right?
It's true, but it's not the lead. Yes, I am a field producer for Thursday Night Football. Not actually traveling to Kansas City this week. I'm actually going to Cleveland next week for a big game, Browns and Steelers, and then I'm going to Cincinnati for Dolphins and Bengals, so that'll be a good one. But I have been working with the Thursday Night Football team this week, and we got some good stuff prepared for the broadcast.
Well, and I know that they actually had one of the preseason games. I think it was the Texans-Chargers preseason game. They did a rehearsal on that because I was out in LA at SoFi Stadium. The Cowboys the following night, there was a Texans and Rams because the Cowboys played the Chargers the following night in a preseason game there. And our production crew could not get into the stadium with the truck and so forth until Saturday morning for that Saturday night game because the Amazon crew was all there doing their dress rehearsal for the entire season. And all I know from a production standpoint, it was unreal the amount of cameras and production equipment and trucks that they had for that game, which is what they're going to have for the regular season games. And so it should be fun to watch on Thursday night.
Yes, it will be great. I actually went to the one preseason game we did do the rehearsal like you mentioned, but Amazon did do a preseason game in Houston. It was Texans and 49ers. And that was one of the most amazing things that I saw as well. It was my first day on the job. And it was incredible how many people were working on that broadcast, the amount of trucks that were all brand new and the amount of crew that they had around the stadium. I was just blown away, truthfully, and I was part of the crew. So it was great to see, and it's going to be a good season on TNF.
Okay, and so that's the way week 2 kicks off. It's the Chargers and the Chiefs. You know, I think it is interesting when you look at the matchups, and there's so much thought. It seems like the schedule maker puts so much thought into the first week matchups, starting with the Thursday night game that was on NBC with the Bills playing the Rams. And then you had Russell Wilson going back to Seattle. And this matchup evolved after the schedule came out, but you had Baker Mayfield against his former team. Lots of great matchups, Tampa Bay and Dallas on Sunday night. Week 2 may not be quite the same marquee matchups.
Yeah, not quite as much intrigue, but there are some good games there, Bill Jones. We're going to do every week on Jonesing for Football, we're going to do 3 categories to preview the weeks. We're going to do our favorite game of the week, which may be the best, may not be, just our favorite. We're going to do an individual matchup that we think you got to watch, and we're going to do a category called Pressures On. So someone who's got some pressure to perform this weekend. So let's start with our favorite game. Would you mind going first and giving me yours?
Well, amazingly, 16 games on the schedule in week 2, and there's only 3 games that are a matchup of 2 unbeaten teams, battles of unbeaten teams. And one of them is that Thursday night game, the Chargers and the Chiefs. And another one of them that I will pick is the Dolphins playing at the Ravens, a battle of unbeatens in Baltimore. Of course, the Ravens take care of business in their opener against the New York Jets, and the Dolphins under their new coach, with their new wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, lots of excitement down in Miami. They disposed of the New England Patriots 20-7. So now this will be a bigger test for the Dolphins as they go to Baltimore to take on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And I think one of the things that's intriguing about it is the contrast in offensive styles when you go from preparing for New England to preparing for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. This will be an interesting test for the Dolphins against this Ravens team. That is the pick of many, including, I think, young Cody. Did you pick Baltimore to win the AFC North? Is that right?
I did.
Uh,
Yes. I really like Baltimore. I think they're loaded. They got to figure out that running back situation. They need J.K. Dobbins to come back, and I think that'll open up the offense a little bit more. But yeah, they kind of cruised past the Jets in week one. And I'm with you. I like the Dolphins. I like what they did. How about Mike McDaniel? Imagine this, Bill Jones, your first game as a head coach in the NFL, and your team beats the team coached by the greatest coach in NFL history. That's a good way to start on the job, don't you think?
I think so. And I haven't even looked at my picks from the first week to see how bad my record was. I know it was horrible, and so I don't even want to look at it. But actually, week two always seems to be, it's easier to pick the games in week two because, and in case of this game right here, all right, I'm picking Baltimore to beat Miami. And one of the main reasons why, it doesn't have anything to do with the strength of the teams. It's the emotional fit of the teams coming off of week one. You know, Baltimore, that was not a game against the Jets that they put a lot of emotional energy into, I don't think, because they're playing the Jets. The Dolphins, on the other hand, I think there was a lot of emotional energy spent by that team under a new coach, against the greatest coach in the history of the game, Belichick and the Patriots. And so I think there's going to be a natural letdown for Miami this week, going on the road and playing at Baltimore. So I'm going to pick the Ravens to beat the Dolphins this week.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game. I actually wouldn't mind getting down to Baltimore. That's actually a pretty easy drive. I might zip down there if I don't have anything else to do on Sunday. Let me give you my favorite game of the week, Bill Jones. It's the other game on the schedule you mentioned, pairing two undefeated teams. It's Monday night here in Philly. It's Vikings, Eagles. I also hope to be at this game. That'd be cool. Do Baltimore on Sunday and then do Philly.
So does Amazon, do you have like a pass to all the games because you're working for Amazon now?
No, I don't. I'm not even going to the first Thursday night game in Kansas City. Remember, I mentioned that. I don't even have a pass to that game, but I am going to week 2 and week 3 and week 4 of the Amazon schedule as well. But anyway, let's focus on the Vikings and Eagles because it's going to be a good one. A double dip on Monday night. Don't forget, Titans Bills is the other one. So that's going to be a good Monday night schedule. Philly and Minnesota both coming off of wins against eventual playoff teams, like I mentioned. Those teams, the Vikings. Everyone saw that they dominated Aaron Rodgers and the Packers from start to finish. We know the Birds tamed the Lions there on the road. I want to see Jalen Hurts go up against that Vikings defense that confused and frustrated Aaron Rodgers from start to finish. It was 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a passer rating of 67.7 for Aaron Rodgers going against Minnesota. So, Bill Jones, I put my researcher hat on. Boom, I just put it on right there. I went back and looked it up. Aaron Rodgers has started 228 games in the NFL. Guess how many times he's had a passer rating under 67.7? So 228 total games as a starter. How many times has he had a passer rating under 67.7?
One time.
No, 15.
Oh, okay.
15 times, but that's still a pretty good percentage because 67 isn't an atrocious quarterback rating. But the fact he's only done it 15 times shows you how good that Vikings defense was in week 1. It might have been a lot different, though, if the rookie Christian Watson would have caught that touchdown pass on the first play from scrimmage. That might have swayed not only Rodgers' stats, obviously, but also the outcome of the game. But I also like the pair of wide receivers in this one, a couple stars on the outside. No one in the league had more receiving yards in week 1 than Justin Jefferson of the Vikings and A.J. Brown of the Eagles. It didn't take long to incorporate Brown into that Birds offense. 10 catches, 155 yards. He looked unguardable at times against the Lions. And speaking of unguardable, Justin Jefferson put up 184 in 2 scores against Green Bay. So I actually think the Eagles are kind of equipped to slow down Justin Jefferson. They have Slay, not Darius Slay, just for the record. It's Slay. They have on one side, and then they have James Bradbury on the other side. So I think the Eagles may be able to slow down Justin Jefferson And I think it'll come down to whoever can contain those star receivers. But I'm excited for that game here in Philly on Monday night.
And of course, Bradbury in his Eagles debut had a pick six against the Lions last week. That's also, and I would say that what had the biggest difference for Aaron Rodgers in that game against the Vikings was the fact he did not have his offensive line in front of him in that game. And that's what I like about this matchup as well. These are two teams, the Eagles and the Vikings, who have invested in their offensive line, and offensive lines make a difference in this league. And so you can just look at the draft capital that has been spent on offensive linemen by both of those teams, and you can look at a lot of their success right there. I like that matchup. All right, we go to individual matchups now.
Yes, sir. What do you got on your list there?
I'm going to go close to home here. Of course, as you know, the Cowboys lost Dak Prescott, and so no one is giving them the possibility of beating the Cincinnati Bengals. And you look at, okay, yes,
including me. I'm not giving them a chance either.
Okay. And the other problem for the Cowboys is that Cincinnati lost its opener against Pittsburgh. And so odds are they will bounce back this week. But I look at not the Cowboys on offense against Cincinnati for my intriguing matchup of the week. I look at when Cincinnati is on offense, and I actually have two individual matchups I'm looking at. And one of them that jumps off the sheet at you would be Trayvon Diggs against Jamar Chase. Alabama versus LSU, the wide receiver going up against the Cowboys cornerback who had 11 picks last year. And if Trayvon Diggs is going to have success against Jamar Chase, then I look at another intriguing matchup, and that would be Micah Parsons versus former Cowboy Lyle Collins at right tackle for the Bengals. And of course, you saw Micah Parsons get a couple of sacks of Tom Brady. He was the one star for the Cowboys in that Sunday night game, a 19-3 loss to Tampa Bay. And I have a prediction that Micah Parsons is going to have at least a couple more sacks this week of Joe Burrow. How many times was Burrow sacked last week against Pittsburgh? I think it was 7 times.
I believe it was
4 picks.
Yep.
And if the Cowboys have any chance at all against Cincinnati this week, they need 7 sacks and 4 more picks for Joe Burrow. And I don't think they're going to get that many, but I do think Parsons, in his run to be the National Football League Defensive Player of the Year, another rung on his resume, will be scored on Sunday afternoon on CBS with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo on the call.
I like that. Bill Jones, I got to ask you, what did you think of that chip block from Leonard Fournette on Micah Parsons? Is that being talked about down there in Dallas?
That is being talked about, and Micah Parsons, in fact, has talked about it on Twitter and says, check out my other one-on-one matchups with Lenny Fournette in that game. And in fact, I was just talking about it with someone at the Star in Frisco. I wouldn't be surprised if that got sent to the league office. And let's check on Friday and see if there might be a fine involved there, because if there's a definition of targeting in this league, that was one right there.
Leonard definitely left his feet. I'm all for the chip block, especially with Micah, because you really have no other chance, most offensive linemen. So you need some sort of chip block or someone else to help. But the fact that he left his feet might have got a little high with his shoulder there as well.
That's right.
We'll see about that. All right, here's mine. Give me Tom Brady versus Dennis Allen in the Bucks versus Saints game. Allen, the former DC, now head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and he's had Brady's number recently. TB12, 1-4 against Allen-led defenses since he came to the Bucks, and that includes the Bucks being swept last year by the Saints. Listen to these numbers in Tom Brady's last 5 games against New Orleans. 8 touchdowns in 5 games, 8 picks, and a passer rating of 75. So while Tom is lighting up the league, and he led the entire league in passing yards and passing touchdowns last season, he can't do the same thing. He can't figure out the Saints defense. It is worth mentioning. Again, we got to mention this. Brady's one win over the Saints was in the postseason on their way to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Bill Jones, we both picked the Bucs to win the NFC South, but it might end up being closer than I think everyone initially realized. Tampa has great players, but they do have some significant questions, offensive line, and they're already dealing with some injuries, Donovan Smith, Chris Godwin. And so I know the Saints barely beat the Falcons, but they have a mega talented roster. So this game between the Bucs and the Saints could go a long way in determining who takes that division crown down there in the NFC South. And so I'm excited to watch Brady versus Allen. It's a must-see matchup every time.
Yep, I think that's a great one. And by the way, the Saints also another team dealing with an injury at left tackle, as Trevor Penning, of course, is on IR, had that turf toe torn ligament in the preseason, their first round draft pick. And so, yeah, that's good. That's a great matchup. And in fact, if it were a, well, there was another battle of unbeatens right there, right? Tampa Bay and New Orleans.
Yeah,
so there you go. Yeah,
there's number four.
Yeah, so there's four of them. Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. So now
our final category, Bill Jones.
Yep.
Pressure's on. Give me someone who's got some pressure on him this week. I know it's only week 2, but we know there's plenty of pressure in this league every week. Someone's on the hot seat.
And I've got young Christian Watson, the wide receiver for the Packers. He's got the pressure on him. All those Green Bay wide receivers have the pressure on them. And of course, it was the first series of the game against the Vikings. He had separation by how many yards would you say on that play?
5 or more. I mean, it was a lot.
He showed with that separation exactly why I loved him so much coming into the draft and why Aaron Rodgers was raving about him. He was talking about how he hasn't had a receiver like him as far as a guy with a long stride who can separate the athleticism that Christian Watson has. However, and I know in the scouting community, the knock on him coming into the draft and why he wasn't a first-round draft pick probably was the fact that he has some issues catching the football. And that is an issue if you're a wide receiver in this league, and it showed on his first pass. And so now the pressure is on Christian Watson, and it's not a must-win game for Green Bay, but they are playing an unbeaten team, the Chicago Bears, coming in there. And so, yeah, I think Christian Watson, if he wants to increase his snap count, he probably needs to start catching the football.
I'm with you right there. But good thing, by the way, good thing Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears, right? Like, even though the Bears won in week 1, I'm still not sure that they're a very good team. They just, I think, happened to beat the Niners and Trey Lance, and the weather had something to do with that. So, yeah, but I'm with you. Christian Watson showed the skills. And I like that Aaron Rodgers actually went back to him later in the game. It took a little bit for Rodgers.
It took like 3 quarters. He finally went back to him. Yeah.
Right. But then he hooked him up a couple times. In the
and as I texted you, because I'm still on the Christian Watson bandwagon, that in his Hall of Fame speech, Christian Watson will reminisce about that first pass that he dropped in the NFL from Aaron Rodgers.
That was incredible. That ball almost caught him. Like, it literally could not have been easier to catch. It wasn't like hard or anything. It just floated right into his hands.
Maybe he'll have Aaron Rodgers, the first ballot Hall of Famer, introduce him when he goes into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. Yeah, I think Aaron would be good with that too. All right. My guy, pressure's on 49ers quarterback Trey Lance. We all thought the Niners' first 2 games were 2 of their easiest of the year. But after losing to the Bears, like we mentioned, San Francisco really needs to win this week versus Seattle, who got a surprise win on Monday night against the Broncos. The number one thing that needs to happen for the Niners to get the W is a better performance from Trey Lance. Awful in Chicago, in the awful weather. You got to give him a little bit of slack there, but just 164 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 50 rating in that driving rainstorm. Straight up, Justin Fields outshined Trey Lance. Fields made more plays and carried an inferior team to victory. As far as Lance is concerned, this is what's kind of not fair for Trey Lance. Remember, the Niners led by 10 points in the fourth quarter of the NFC title game last year. They were really close to playing in the Super Bowl. And even though they turned the keys over to Trey Lance, an inexperienced second-year quarterback, the expectations remain the same. Anything short of multiple playoff games will be a failure. And because of that, and the accomplished, healthy backup quarterback just sitting there on the bench, Jimmy G, an 0-2 start for the Niners. And I think you're going to start hearing those Jimmy G calls for him to a little more care. And listen to this, Bill Jones, because this is important. One more thing to consider. The Niners' next 11 games after Seattle. This is when their schedule gets hard. At Denver, versus the Rams, at Carolina, at Atlanta, versus Kansas City, at the Rams, versus the Chargers, at the Cardinals, versus the Saints, versus the Dolphins, versus the Bucks. So they'll be lucky to win 5 of those games, even if Trey Lance plays well. He's got to win this week against Seattle. Pressure is on you, Trey Lance.
And I will even add that you can add Seattle to that list.
Sure.
Because Seattle beat their next opponent, Denver, on Monday night.
That's right. Seattle might be an actual team. Geno Smith looks good.
I love that. All right. So that was low-hanging fruit that Cody just picked off for his most high-pressure player this week.
I had to, because you have to see the schedule. The schedule is really what shows you why the pressure is on. Because if they had like a light schedule, like the Cowboys or the Eagles or the Colts, that I know they all have light schedules, week 2 wouldn't be a big deal because they'd be able to kind of get back to 500 in a few weeks. That's not going to be the case with the schedule that the Niners have.
You think the Cowboys have a light schedule when they open with Tampa Bay and they get Cincinnati the second week? Now they got to go at the unbeaten Giants in week 3, the unbeaten Washington Commanders in week 4, and then they go play at the Super Bowl champion Rams the next week, and then they play the unbeaten NFC East favorite Philadelphia Eagles on the road in week 6 without their starting quarterback.
Well, it's harder without Dak, but the Cowboys had tied for the easiest schedule in the league coming into this season.
One more note. The next game after that is your playoff-bound Detroit Lions. And then the unbeaten Chicago Bears after that. Then at Green Bay. It's the toughest schedule in the league all of a sudden. All right.
No, it's not, Bill Jones. No, it's
not. As we close this out, I'm trying to figure out what channel that Thursday night Chiefs Chargers game is on. How do I watch that game? What channel is it on?
It's streaming on Amazon Prime, baby. No channel needed. You don't even need a TV. You just flip on your phone, or if you have a smart TV, you can do that too. But you go Amazon Prime, and that's where you can watch the greatest play-by-play man to ever do it, Al Michaels and my guy Kirk Herbstreit and Kaylee Hartung on the sidelines. They'll bring you all the action from Arrowhead.
So do I need to get an Amazon account? Is that what I need to do?
I know you have an Amazon account, Bill Jones. I know.
Will you share your Amazon account with me so that I can watch the game?
I'll text it to you offline. Yeah.
Go ahead and share it. Go ahead and share it with all of us, just in case we don't have an Amazon account.
That's fine. I'll put it on my Twitter. Cody
okay.
5, hit me there.
All right. Sounds good. And your password is Go Buckeyes, I'm sure.
Go Bucks 01. Yes, sir. Exactly.
There you go. All right. That does it for this edition of Jonesing for football. And I got an idea. How about we do it again next week, young Cody?
I like the sound of this, Bill Jones. We're going to try to do it every week if Mr. Jones' schedule allows. He's a busy man. So if I can corner him with some time, we'll make it happen.
I'm the busy man. You're the one traveling this great country on Amazon's dime. All right. Appreciate it, Cody. And we'll see all of you next week here on Jonesing for Football.